Okay, welcome everyone to the March 3rd OMR Architecture Meeting. Today we have a couple of topics to discuss. So the first one is one proposed, or is an issue opened by David McCann. So David, if you're able to maybe take us through that one, and we can hopefully have a good discussion on that.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone. So the reason I've raised this issue is because I'm looking at using the core dump sort of aspect of the code but in a containerized environment. And this provides its sort of different challenges than perhaps would be normally had in a sort of an on-prem kind of system. So there's always been the issue of if you're forking the code and then aborting, you're subject to the OS restrictions on what happens with the core dumps. But it becomes a little bit harder when you're in a container environment and you're no longer in control of the host environment so much. And so you tend to be subjected to whatever is set up on the host. And you can't necessarily change it in the container environment as part of your setup. And so therefore, if you want to write the core dump to a particular location on a so some of the stories that you've been allocated, sorry, the term escapes me, persistent storage. If you want to write it there, but on the host there's some sort of redirection of the core dumps, then it's going to get sucked into the host and not to the persistent storage where you want it to go. So this becomes a bit of an issue, sort of working in the container sort of environments. And so I was just sort of trying to investigate, or sort of to raise awareness of what we could do about this. And this was sort of raised before by someone who raised it against Podman, whether it would be possible to override the core pattern, for example, when you start the container. But that was sort of rejected as being more of a kernel issue, that you'd have to have a namespacing issue on the core pattern in the kernel. So that would be one way of solving the issue. What I was sort of suggesting was using a mechanism similar to was used previously in things like the Google core dumper code, or as the OMR already has on the Mac code, which is to generate the core dump itself rather than using the OS to do it for it. In which case, it wouldn't be subjected to the same, wouldn't be subjected to these restrictions that the OS is putting on you, and so therefore you could get it to go out to where you wanted it to go. So that's kind of what I was wondering whether it would be possible. The Google core dumper code, was written 8 years ago, hasn't been kept up to date, no longer compiles on all the platforms as sort of assembler code that doesn't seem to work anymore. So I don't know how this code will be written or what will be required, but I was just sort of raising that as I don't know how well the core dumping code that's in OMR currently is sort of fit for purpose in the containerized environments.
Okay, thanks for introducing that, David. I don't know, either maybe Keith or Bebneet, I know you've got a lot more experience in this area of the code than many of us do. Do you understand the problem, and do you happen to have any insight as to whether or not OMR could adapt to provide what he needs?
So yeah, I'll start here. So there isn't really any core dumping code for Linux anyway. You point out the stuff they did for Mac, but that was kind of because we didn't really have another choice given the notarization rules that Apple imposes on Mac applications. On Linux, my first reaction was that the administrator has set up a host in a particular way and set the core dump pattern as they see fit, and normal users shouldn't be able to override that. But I think it might be reasonable if we provide some kind of mechanism to say to opt into this new behavior that you're proposing we do to generate the core files kind of programmatically instead of letting the kernel do it. Assuming that like we did on Mac, assuming that it's all the information that we want to be in a core file is accessible, that would seem reasonable. So you brought it up, David. Are you offering to help out?
Well, I would do if I had the if I had the skills to do so, but I'm not sure I do. That's
Okay.
part of the problem. So yeah, that's my issue. I'm aware that I'm asking for stuff that I don't really have the capability of offering, or that whether anyone else does have the capability of offering.
So my first, estimate is that it's probably doable, and I've discovered some things recently, some ways to gain access to some information that I wasn't sure was possible before. I'm not sure I have the exact example in my head right now, but again, assuming that we gain access to or can get access to all the things that belong in a core file. It shouldn't be a whole lot more work, or or should be a similar amount of work as was the Mac version. But like I said, I think we would want applications to opt into this different behavior and not just get it by default.
Keith, how much of the Apple code, the Mac code, can be reused as is? Or does it have to be very specialized for Linux?
Probably close to zero, because Mac core files are a different format. There's a whole lot of different system services involved in on a Mac versus Linux. So yeah, so I mean, the basic structure of what we're doing is probably similar, but there are a lot of details that are different, and so.
Do you happen to have a rough estimate of how long it took someone like you to do that work? On the order of weeks?
You see, so I didn't do that.
Oh,
I think
okay.
It was Mike who did the Mac. Mike Zhang did the Mac one, I think. It's probably a matter of weeks to do it, for someone such as myself. But that's just kind of a grab something out of the air kind of estimate.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think maybe okay, so if there is going to be work to be done here, it sounds like it's going to take, I guess, on the order of weeks or months to turn something around. Perhaps what we could maybe settle on, not necessarily during the call today, but perhaps even in the issue, as to whether or not this is even a good idea to do. This is something that the project wants to do going forward, and then we can kind of, get or commit resources to it as appropriate. So I guess the question up for discussion then would be whether or not this is something that we want the project to do. It seems reasonable to me, but others can certainly weigh in.
Yeah, well, as I said, I think it's reasonable, but I think it ought to be an opt-in feature, not one that happens automatically.
Yeah, agree.
Because administrators may have thought they've locked down their system, and they don't want multiple gigabyte core files flying around. They have some other mechanisms that come into play managing the volume of core files, and so we wouldn't want to subvert all that without somebody doing it consciously.
From what I read in the code, I noticed that the core file does get generated, but it gets generated in a different directory. So if it's as easy as just updating OMR dump create to reuse what is getting generated by a port by deriving the core file location.
So I'm not sure, but my estimate or my expectation of the container influence on this is that the file may be it's either in a location that is visible only within the container, or it's in a location that's visible only from outside the container. And so both of those present they present different kinds of problems. And so if it's outside the container, the application won't be able to see it. That's the nature of the containerization. And if it's only inside, then you have to work at it differently to get it out of the container.
David, would you have more information on what's the accessibility of the core file in your scenario?
I think it unlikely to be accessible from the container.
Okay. So I'm guessing we will have to take the OSX approach that Keith has suggested.
Any other opinions on the matter? Okay, I think that we should, have a little bit of a discussion still in the issue itself to sort of document what we've discussed here, and it's kind of the solution that we think is going to work going forward. So however, the unfortunate thing is it doesn't sound like you'll have a solution, David, anytime in the short term. I mean, this is going to be a bit of a longer term item that may get done.
And that's fine. What is there, does function, but it just requires effectively configuration for a single Kubernetes node, for example, and which can be done. It's just how much you want people to go through hoops and to get that capability. And so it's what's there is something to start with, and then moving forward, if it can be made more fit for purpose in a container environment, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, certainly appreciate you raising the issue and bringing this to our attention. So, this is maybe something that we can make some progress on in the near future. So, we'll summarize the discussion today in the issue. Any other discussion around this topic that anybody wants to bring up? No. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, David, for bringing that up.
And, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Move forward. Yep. No problem. Thanks. Okay. Our next topic on the agenda is to discuss some of the CI pipeline tools. So this is, I guess, starting with 2254, which was the copyright, getting a copyright job added to the CI pipeline. But if there's other jobs that we'd want to consider adding to that pipeline as well. So I believe Babneet is going to be taking us through this discussion. So Babneet, you want to take it away?
Can I share my slides?
Yes.
To give a more visual perspective.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Did it work?
No, it doesn't seem to be. Yes, I can see your screen now.
And I'm guessing the slides are visible?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few checks which will make the continuous integration tools of the process more easy. The first one is the automated copyright check.
Could you just put it in presentation mode, if you can?
Yes, I can. Let's see. Is it the presenter view or the?
Oh, I meant the full slideshow view. That's what I meant. Like the other screen, but yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah. So the first tool will be the automated copyright check. There is an issue open for this since 2018, but there was a discussion, but then there was a huge pause since 2019 and no progress was made, probably because the requirements for this tool were never agreed upon. So currently we do these checks manually, and recently I've noticed that a lot of copyrights are missing, and if there is oversight, even the dates can become inaccurate. So the manual checks are difficult because it takes a lot of reviewer time and also contributors' time. So, and it becomes infeasible when there are a large number of files in a PR. I'm not sure if there will be legal implications if you're not updating copyrights accurately. So, Derek, would you know if there are any legal implications if copyright dates are out of sync?
I mean, I think there are some legal implications. I just don't know how serious they are. Sorry, Mark, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, it's for establishing the dates for when copyright is established. So copyright has eventually, as I understand it, some kind of expiry date. So the capturing the dates at which that you're making changes, the last time you made changes, etc., is a legal concern for us. Yes.
Thanks, Mark. So I think it will also benefit legally as well. So the main benefit will be, we'll be able to save a lot of reviewer and contributor time and get rid of all the problems which were discussed in the previous slide. So the main discussion I would like to do is how do we want to implement the automated copyright checker? Because in OpenJ9, which is a downstream project and which consumes OMR, has an existing copyright checker, and it has also an ignore list, which can allow us to ignore copyright checks for a certain list of files. So, or do we want to look into other third-party tools in order to support such a feature for OMR?
Do you want to stop and talk about this, or?
Yep. So I would like to.
Well, I mean, I think we have. I mean, there's working. I mean, sorry. From the history of this, I mean, there's working code in the OpenJ9 project, right? They have a copyright checker that works reasonably well and probably does pretty much what we want it to do. So I think it would just make sense to somehow surface what they have in OpenJ9 in the OMR project. I think that some of the discussion, some of what derailed or slowed the discussion last time was around where should that tool live, but right? Like it doesn't seem right that OMR is consuming a tool that lives in OpenJ9. So the answer was, okay, well, maybe the tool should move to OMR, or maybe that tool should move into its own kind of repo altogether, like a third-party repo altogether, a tooling kind of repo for that sort of thing. And I think that the discussion kind of got stuck around that point. But I don't know if we have to look for third-party tools other than unless OpenJ9 is considered to be that third party. I would think that it does pretty much exactly what we want it to do, and we just need to find a way of getting it to work. Now, given how long this has already been taken, we may as well just, my opinion is we may as well just clone the tool and use it in OMR. Like it can't be that complicated, I would think. So, if the discussion around finding a proper home for it is going to take that much longer, I think we just clone it and go for it.
So by cloning, it means like we are committing it into OMR and reusing it from the OMR
lifting it into the OMR project. I mean, ideally, I'd like to find a common solution here, but if that isn't possible, just lifting it into OMR and reusing it is certainly a possibility.
Where does it live in OpenJ9 right now?
Yeah, build/env/Jenkins/jobs infrastructure copyright check.groovy.
Okay, so it's in the main OpenJ9 repository then.
That's right.
Okay.
And I'm just looking; it hasn't changed in a year and a half, so it seems fairly stable. One question might be. I don't know. I think maybe OMR source is expecting a different copyright than would OpenJ9, and so it'll, at the very least, that kind of thing might need to change. But I'm with Darrell. Just copy it and adjust to suit. But I would connect it to the GitHub Actions rather than a Jenkins thing.
Does the copyright checker care anything past the second line where we see the copyright? Because that should be pretty much the same between OMR and OpenJ9, I would think.
Well, the line that begins with the word copyright isn't necessarily the second. I think the script expects it to be in the first few hundred lines or something like that. But
okay, that should still be fine then.
Yeah.
What does the
It only cares
OpenJ9
about that line.
What is the copyright checker actually like? What are the list of things that it actually checks?
Copyright, parentheses C, and then a 4-digit date, and then the current date. That's it.
Okay, and it ignores like any name of a vendor or person that's in that statement.
That's right.
Like copyright IBM Corp would be ignored.
There's a comment that it's different copyright depending on where the PR is coming from, but I don't see any other like versions of it. So yeah, because I think it's different in extensions, or maybe it used to be. I don't know, but it seems like it's only that one regex. So.
Okay, and all it does is check. Like it's kind of a does this pass or not? Is the
it's just simple. Does this regex match this line, or does this come up in this file basically?
So I agree with Daryl and Keith. Doesn't sound like something that's going to change very frequently, so we should just copy it. Same license, so there's no issue copying stuff between the two projects. So.
What is the ignore list of those files that do not have a copyright?
Yeah, so if
So
there's
those are
a
the
file
files.
that doesn't get checked, you just put the file full file path in the ignore list, and then that's just a .copyright ignore in the root of the repo.
So it's not to say those files can't have a copyright. It's just saying we don't care.
Right. Yeah, like the configure file, for example, has a copyright from someone else. So it doesn't matter.
Will the ignore list also?
Same state.
Or you both talked at the same time?
So I think Mark, you can go first. I can.
I was just going to say, as most of the third-party tools are probably in the same state, they should just go. That old thing should just go into the ignore list.
Does it also ignore directories?
We tried that originally, and then the intern couldn't get it going properly, and then we just decided, well, it's safer if we just explicitly list out the files. Then that way, something doesn't get ignored by accident.
Okay, so we need a find command first to
Yeah.
add that into the list. How long? Okay, fine. It doesn't matter.
If it's like an incredible amount of files, like right now, the only thing in OpenJ9 in the file is the copyright ignore file. So if OMR has a crap ton, then we might want to relook at supporting that, like a star or something. So we talked about like copying it into the OMR repo. When you talked about maybe looking at a third-party tool, if we were to ignore the relationship between OpenJ9 and OMR and just say, oh, OpenJ9 has this third-party tool, can we not just point at it directly? And that way, if there's some change that needs to be made, you just have to make it in the one copy.
We're going to have a dependency. The upstream version of it should be in OMR, just because that's the way the dependency flows from OMR to OpenJ9. Like,
Yeah. So
OMR should not have a dependency on a downstream project. That doesn't make any sense.
So if we want to have the stuff separate in a repo separate from OMR, it shouldn't be OpenJ9. It should either be a third repo that OMR and OpenJ9 can both use. But that complicates things a little bit because now you have to clone two repos to check the copyrights on one of them. Admittedly, we don't expect the copyright repo to be large, but who knows? I've seen some interesting things of late, and I forget which repo I've been watching. They've been leveraging reusable scripts for GitHub Actions. So that in a repo they have a script that then they use a bunch of places, and there's, I guess, parameter passing mechanisms and all that kind of stuff. So I think, like I say, I think that whatever lands in OMR should use GitHub Actions, and we should aim to, and maybe this solves all the problems, aim to have it packaged in a reusable way, and then OpenJ9 can change its copyright tool to reuse the action from OMR to check the copyrights there. And then we have one place where it lives. And so the GitHub Actions, I think, already have the support for referencing actions in a different repo. And so all this would just fall out in the wash like that.
Yeah, I think GitHub Actions is a good idea. My only concern is how much time anybody's going to spend on this for the amount of value versus just pointing at OpenJ9s and be done with it.
Or versus just making a copy of it.
Yeah.
If it's not changing that frequently, the cost of duplicating it isn't very high.
So
I guess if we wanted to have it live in OMR, and then at some point OpenJ9 will use the thing from OMR, in a way, making a copy of it is the first step of that. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. So if you want to kind of draw out the sort of the longer term plan, that would be my suggestion. Make a copy of what we have in OpenJ9 now, put that new copy in OMR, and that can mutate into the GitHub Actions someday. And then once that happens, OpenJ9 can reuse it. But we get the benefit of this automated checking in OMR earlier by just just copying it. The question though, is there a way to set this up to be automatic, which is one of the goals as I understand it? A committer on OMR will say, Jenkins build all or whatever. Do they have to remember to do the copyright check as well, or is it going to be automatic somehow?
For Jenkins or for GitHub?
For the OMR project, when somebody opens a pull request.
Right, sorry, for the GitHub Action version of it or the Jenkins version of it?
Well, the GitHub Action version, I understand, can be automatic.
Yeah.
But
so the Jenkins ones is
before we get to the GitHub Action, what's going to be expected of committers in OMR? Will they have to manually run the command to check those things?
No, it's automatic.
Yeah, whatever's currently in OpenJ9 is automatic.
Yeah.
But there's more than just that script to make that happen, as I understand it.
Well, it's just setting up the job with the plugin or whatever.
Okay.
So I did it like 2 minutes before the call to try it, and it works. I launched it on one of the existing pull requests, and it failed because the one file has a different copyright check. But so it's completely valid. But it's
you
just
tried that in OMR, Adam?
Yeah. So it's just pointing at OpenJ9s right now. But the file's generic enough that it just works as is.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like it'll be a lot of work if we just.
No, so if you want to move it,
copy it over. Yeah,
we just have to update the file location.
Okay. Does everybody agree with that approach? Any opinions against that approach?
I think it should work, but I think if we decide to share the script among different projects, At some point, I think the regex that we use may also need to be a parameter to the script rather than something hard-coded inside the script.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that
there
makes
will be
sense.
a regex list and a list of files which need to be excluded.
Yeah, you could put the regex in a
You could
file
have
like
a,
copyright ignore.
well, let's call it a copyright config, which has
Right, yeah.
ignore and notice format.
Sure. And you could probably make it support multi-line if you wanted to.
Adam, are you volunteering to do this work?
The copyright one's done.
Yeah.
You just have to commit it to OMR, and then I'll update the URL.
Oh, you have a PR? You've opened a PR for that?
No, I
Oh.
did the job already. So you
Right,
just
but
have to
open. You're going to
Oh.
open a PR to commit to copy
I
the
could.
code to.
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
And I'll put in the ignore file as well.
Okay. Where does that live? Does that live in the root directory?
The ignore
Like-
file does.
Yeah. Okay.
The Groovy file can go anywhere. So I'll put it next to the other Jenkins files.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. All right, Babni, were there other tools you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, one more.
Or other checks that you wanted to talk about?
Yep, there's one last one, which is the automated line index check. I
You
think
already have that, I believe.
Yeah,
in OMR.
Yes.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, then it's my bad. I thought we didn't have this, or other than that, I didn't have anything.
Yeah, just check out I checked a recent pull request, just before the meeting, and you can see the GitHub action that does that.
So that's good. So I think with that, I don't have any other points for this meeting.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. That sounds like we should have a good productivity tool in place here shortly. So, any other discussion on CI pipeline tooling? Any other ideas or thoughts that anybody wants to bring up now that we have everyone here?
I know Adopt has some like shell check ones, but I don't know if we're interested in those or not.
What does shell check do?
I think there's other tools to check like syntax of your file or something.
I think it's like lint for shell scripts.
Right.
Yeah, we've talked about source code formatting in the past, but that's a pretty deep topic to go into. So we used to have a linter that ran. Actually, no, we do run the linter jobs in OMR, but
I thought that got disabled because
it did, because it's not Ubuntu. Yes, that's right. It's not. It doesn't support Ubuntu 20. Yes, we have to move up to that.
Or 18, as I understand it.
Or 18, yes. But yeah, anyways, that was another one that we ran. We should probably get that re-enabled again. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, this. Go ahead.
Sorry. In Adoptium, they restrict PRs to be merged if there are no reviews, or they block PRs to be merged if there are not sufficient reviews. Is that something of interest for OMR?
We'd have to define what sufficient means. That means
Over there, I think the requirement is at least 2 approving reviews are needed.
Yeah. So I guess OMR is sort of at the state where it has, the minimum is 1, which
yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure we need that. I mean, I guess we could have that, but I don't think we need that yet. It's just validating process that we don't have yet.
Yeah, I might just double the overhead of getting PRs merged rather than have any actual value.
Yeah, I think unless we particularly think that we have a problem with insufficient review happening.
I don't think we do.
No, neither do I.
All right. Well, I mean, this doesn't have to be the end of the discussion, and if there's any ideas in the future for other changes to the CI pipeline, by all means, bring it up, and we can certainly consider it as a community. Okay. Any other discussion on this topic today? Okay. If not, that was our last topic on the agenda for this week. So the agenda has been created for next week, or the next call. So by all means, add proposed agenda items if you have them. If not, we'll adjourn now. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.